All right, Lieutenant Governor John Garamendi, I want to thank you for talking with Calitics.com right now.
It's good. You guys do a terrific job getting the word out around California about California politics, particularly from the Democratic perspective. So it's really important. I'm delighted to be with you.
Thank you so much. So the first day of the convention was sort of dramatic with the Senator Kennedy.
There were two things that really struck me. Well, three things actually. The enthusiasm of all of the delegates from around the nation, but really Ted Kennedy, a dear personal friend of both my wife and I. Our kids went to school together for 8 years in Washington, D.C., and his speech was so powerful. A sick person, but he pulled up the energy and he delivered a classic Ted Kennedy speech, calling upon us to really be the best that we can, to be part of the nation's future. And this is the man that, it was a poignant moment and a very emotional moment for me, and I suspect for everybody that was watching around the nation. And then, of course, Michelle Obama. She presented herself as one very classy woman who will make a terrific First Lady. You look at that and you go, yeah, now here's somebody that can really bring honor and dignity to the White House, her family, family values, strength, intelligence, and a career woman, all of that. We're talking about a wonderful First Lady and a terrific person to advise and consult with the next President of the United States, her husband.
It's true. And during the Senator Kennedy's speech, I know everybody sort of got up at the end, even away from the TV. So we were watching on TV at the Big Tent, and about 100 people stood up to clap for a TV.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I know I was watching there in the arena, and frankly, I was overcome with emotion. This man has been a very special part of my life. His brother really set the pace for my wife and I when he was at Berkeley for the Charter Day in 1962. My wife was there. She was in a wheelchair. She'd broken her leg, and she listened to him and his call to service, which he made throughout that period of time. And we went in the Peace Corps as a result of that. And that really set the pace for our lives, and I know for literally millions of other Americans who have made service a central part of their lives.
Right, and you have been a prominent supporter of Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
I know the media wants to portray this like, there's some sort of big battle brewing, but from everybody I've spoken to, there seems to be a growing consensus and unity. How do you feel about that?
Well, all of us that get involved in a primary, we attach to our candidate. We attach emotionally, we attach with our time, our effort, our money, and it's natural that we would be continuing to support that candidate. But all of us, at least in the Democratic Party, we know that we have a much larger task at hand, and that is to put in place a fundamental change in the direction this nation's going. And so this convention is really an opportunity for us to go through a ritual. It happens every 4 years. People attached to a candidate, they come here strongly supporting their candidate. And one of the purposes of a convention is for all of us to, in a ritual, transfer our loyalty from whomever it was, and in my case from Hillary, to Obama. And we're in the process of doing that. Tonight, Tuesday night, Hillary will speak. And she will talk about her vision of America, and she will, in that speech, transfer her loyalty to Obama. Now, she's been doing that, but this is the formal method of doing it at this convention. Tomorrow there'll be a vote. There'll be votes for Hillary, and somewhere along that process, people will stand back, and by acclamation, we will nominate Barack Obama. And that is the formal transfer of allegiance that takes place at every convention. And we will do that, and we'll come out of this convention united and determined to take back the presidency.
Terrific. On to back home,
yes,
where we have quite a situation brewing.
We've got a very bad situation in California. And unfortunately, we've not had the leadership from the governor's office that's absolutely essential. This budget crisis didn't just happen in the last month and a half. This, we knew last December that we were going to have a severe budget deficit. The governor put forth a budget, as he should, but he did not engage in the negotiations in January, February, right on through July that are absolutely essential. You can't wait until August to put the compromise on the table. You can't wait to August, a month and a half after when the budget's supposed to be done, to say, okay, now let's talk about a compromise. No, you got to start in January, working with the legislative leaders, working with the public, explaining to the public what is at stake. There is a blueprint. There's a model that's been in place in California for more than 50 years about how to deal with the budget crisis. Ronald Reagan twice had to deal with it. Pete Wilson once, George Deukmejian once. They look at the history of this state and you will see that they followed the same blueprint. They sought reform and they got reform. They made cuts and they raised taxes. That's what is necessary in every budget crisis, historically and this time. But you don't wait until August to put that on the table.
It's true.
And that's the mistake that Schwarzenegger made.
And I've spoken to several assembly members and media folks who say that one of the failings of the current administration is whereas Pete Wilson would go out and twist arms the Republican Party, Governor Schwarzenegger doesn't seem to have the rapport with his fellow Republicans in the legislature.
The process of putting together a budget cannot begin in August. It's got to begin early. You've got to start working with people that you believe you can get those votes from. Twisting arms, that's part of it. But also it's the personal connection. And it's the explaining to the large population of California why the compromise is necessary. Yes, you can twist arms. Yes, the governor has extraordinary powers to do that, and yes, that needs to be done. That's just a part of it. You got to take the argument to the public and start early, preparing the public for the compromise that you know in January will have to be made in order to put a budget together.
Given that we have elections and seemingly rapidly approaching, how will the elections themselves in the legislative districts and all up and down the election, how will that be affected by the budget?
Well, most members of the legislature are in safe districts. There's only a small handful that are up for grabs. And so those that are in the safe district, Democrat and Republican alike, they're not forced by their district, by the voters in the district, to compromise. And so that's why the governor has to begin early in the process saying, we need to find the middle ground here. Now, we're in that moment now, although it's almost September 1st. Nonetheless, we're in that moment where now compromise is being discussed. Late, to be sure. The legislators, most who are not termed out, they'll get elected. Those that are termed out will be replaced by, for the most part, people that do not have to seek a compromise, both Republican and Democrat. And that's one of the problems that we have today. Term limits together with the nature of the districts.
Hey, real quick to transition again, you have an extended history of supporting and defending the environment.
Yes.
And recently I know you've done a lot of work with the Coastal Commission.
Right.
And protecting our coast. Senator McCain wants to open up oil drilling along the coast. Californians, I know, where some other states might support that, Californians are still somewhat against that. How do we protect our coast from that?
Well, I've talked to many members of Congress and also had discussions with Nancy Pelosi's staff about this. The reality is that there will be a compromise in Congress, and I suspect that there will be some additional areas of coastal America in which drilling will be allowed, but it will not be California. In fact, here before the California delegation, Nancy Pelosi made it very clear there will not be an opening of new federal leases off the California coast. So we're going to protect the California coast. In fact, the entire west coast of America will be protected. Other areas, probably along the Gulf Coast, will be open for drilling. Okay, that's fine for them, but not in California.
Okay, and some of your other, you've had long histories in environmental protection in other areas as well besides just the drilling.
Well, when you look at California, you're looking at an extraordinarily rapid growing population. With 38 million people, we're going to be 50 million people in another 15 to 20 years. We need to be taking very special care of our environment, which has always been a fragile environment. We've got an environment that's always been on the edge. So water issues, how we deal with species, the ecological systems of California, the coastal areas, of utmost importance to us. But overlying all of this is the issue of climate change. Our precious, our very sensitive environment is going to be dramatically altered by climate change. We know that the snow in the Sierra Nevada mountains will be 30 to 70% less. We know the sea level will rise. All of these things will put pressure on the California environment, and therefore we have to take additional steps. First, we've got to reduce our greenhouse gases, and secondly, we're going to have to adapt to the inevitable changes. As a man who's been involved in environmental issues in California for more than 35 years, I know that we must do this, and I know that we can do it. In 1978, I carried legislation, became law, that provided the very first solar, wind, and energy conservation tax credits to encourage solar, wind, and conservation. Now that was 30 years ago. Now we're back to doing it again, and we can and we will.
And one more question.
Yep.
Given all the work we need to do on the environment,
Yes.
There's also the important issue, especially for the Central Valley, of water.
Exactly.
Now, back in the 80s, we voted against the peripheral canal. Are we ever going to see that again? And hopefully not. But what are the other solutions we can talk about?
Well, if you take a look at water in California, the best source of water is conservation. Agricultural conservation, urban conservation, that's the first step. We've done a lot. We've done extraordinary steps, but there's much more that can and must be done on conservation. Secondly, we have to develop a reservoir system in which we're not focused on surface reservoirs, but underground reservoirs. The aquifers of California need to be replenished and then available to us when the inevitable cycle of droughts occurs. And then, as we do that, the transfer of water will become a central issue. Climate change probably means that the Pacific Ocean will rise. That puts the delta in jeopardy. And the transfer of water through the delta, as we presently do, is not going to happen if the Pacific Ocean rises, say, 18 inches. So we're going to need to figure out how to deal with that. There are several alternatives available to us. We don't need to move right now on selecting one or another of those alternatives. But what we need to do is to move on conservation, move on the aquifers, the underground storage systems, and making water available to those systems, particularly when the water's in the delta, which is the wintertime.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.